In the end will all become stories. Margaret Atwood. This is the story of Alan Wilden Bunn, World War II soldier, home builder, New Jersey native. It is not the complete story of Alan, but a small snippet of his life as shown through snapshots gathered from photograph albums purchased at an estate sale of his late wife. Purchased for $30, the memories and stories held within the pages are worth so much more. Taken from Ancestry.com, this is a brief overview of Alan's early life. He was born on October 2nd in 1906 in Lebanon, New Jersey, to Charles and Carrie. He had 2 brothers and 3 sisters. Alan passed away on June 24, 1994 in Pluckerman, New Jersey at the age of 87 and was buried in his hometown. There were no known children. This 1910 census shows Alan's family, his father Charles and Carrie, and their children, the eldest being Ramsey, 2 daughters Stella, Nellie, another Charles, Alan, and then the youngest daughter, Carrie. All were born in New Jersey, including Alan's parents. In the continuation of the 1910 census, we can see that Alan's father was a home builder and that his eldest son served as an apprentice carpenter. In the one photograph album, it was believed to have belonged to Alan's niece. These photos actually show Alan's sister Carrie. She is in the picture on the left, and then in the picture on the right, she's easily detected by being the woman in the middle. She has the same face. And those are 2 nieces, sisters, on either side of her. Alan was a member of the Army Service Forces, which worked under many different hats during World War II. The patch on his uniform, as seen in the main photo portrait of Alan shown on the first slide, was determined to be the patch of the Army Service Forces, which is a star within a circle. The Army Service Forces took over certain basic tasks which had to be performed for the support of military operations. It was a procurement and supply agency for the Army both in the United States and abroad, and during both combat and training operations. This was its central purpose, but there were other tasks as well, many tasks that had to be done to keep a gigantic army in existence and effective in combat. This was taken from The Organization and Role of the Army Service Forces by John D. Millett. If you are interested in learning more about the Army Service Forces, if you look up John D. Millett online, you can actually find the entire PDF of his book, and that is free of charge. This military unit was created in 1942 when the Army was undergoing a reorganization. The Army Service Force was an essential branch of the military during the war, supplying administrative and technical support. Various sectors of the Army Service Forces included the Signal Corps, Chemical Warfare Service, Medical Department, and Quartermaster Corps. Alan was actually a member of the Company E 346 Engineers. This is a photograph that was found in one of the photo albums of his Engineer Organization Center Review, July 4th, 1942, in Camp Claiborne, Louisiana. A brief history of the Engineer Regiment, as taken from Answers.com, which seemed to be one of the only websites that had some type of timeline for this regiment. It was formed early 1942 with training at Camp Claiborne, Louisiana, which we saw in the previous photo. They went onward to England in early August 1942, landed at Omaha Beach in Normandy late June 1944, where they then ventured to France. In late November of 1944, they moved to Belgium, where they stayed until the spring of 1945 when they moved onward to Germany. This information was not for Company E, which Allen belonged to. It was for a different company, but the timeline seems to match with dates and locations written on the back of Allen's photographs. Luckily for us, Allen labeled the back of many photographs with a location and date, so that helped to form a timeline of his journey in Europe. This was found amongst some of the photographs and cards. I actually found this the third time I went through the album because it was so small and thin, it kind of blended in, but this is probably my favorite piece. So here we have Allen's ID with his thumbprints. This was issued August 4th, 1942. And then on the left side, you have his personal information, his signature, and his serial number. And he looked to be 5 feet 5 inches tall. These were his dog tags. He did get the tetanus toxoid shot, and then his blood type was A, and the P represents his religion. Carrie Ramsey was his sister, who was in the photographs. So that was the next of kin contact for Allen. This was another photo of Allen, along with his writing at the top from an envelope that he had sent while he was still in the States. This photograph, there's actually two. The one on the right is a water view on the side. You can see the ocean and then the men's arms. And then the photo on the left is a great snapshot of the military men just biding the time on their ship, reading, smoking a pipe, waiting until they get to their next destination. Allen had photographs from when he was in France. This is one photograph of a family actually in France, and it was in, excuse my butchering of the French word, Neuilly-Plaisance, which was a French commune in the eastern suburbs of Paris. So you can see Allen has it marked France in 1944. I love this photograph he took of the inside of a French home. There is a dog on the bottom right. You have the doll. Atop of the piano, there are personal family photographs, the paintings on the wall, the piano, the lights, the sconces on the piano. It actually is, I think, a beautiful photograph that depicts a French home during the time of the war. This was a postcard that Allen sent to his fiancée, Thelma, who went by the name of Timmy. And it says, "Darling, I hope this will explain how I miss you. All my love and kisses, your Al." Dated France, November 5th, 1944. My heart flies to yours. This was Thelma. She loved dogs. In her obituary when she died in 2018, it mentioned her love of dogs, and here she is with a puppy by her side. And here's another photo of Thelma. As you can see in the bottom right, she was called Timmy, and this was a photo that she had given to Allen where she wrote, "Timmy, I love you always." We move the timeline to Belgium. This is a great photo of Allen. He wrote on the back, "Myself on throne, Rudy in the background, now guess." So him on the throne, aka the bathrooms. It seemed that Allen was fond of smoking pipes or cigars perhaps, because there were a few photos that showed him with a pipe or cigar in his mouth. But I love this photo, and I think it shows a great sense of humor. And there he is again. I find this photo amazing. This is Alan and some of his comrades. If you look, you see that on his left hand, he does have a wedding ring. I have not been able to discern a marriage date yet between Thelma and Alan, but this photo was dated 1945. But I do have cards, I believe in 1942 though, that say that he writes his fiance. So they must have been married in the meantime. But I just love this photo. And the man in the bottom right, he just reminds me of Daniel Craig. I think he could be a doppelganger for him. If you're not familiar with Daniel Craig, he played James Bond in some of the more recent movies. But I just think that this photo is really great. So we do have one photo of Alan and Thelma. Over on the right side, the card to Aunt Thelma and Uncle Alan, it was in the photo album and had I think it was for a wedding card. And I believe that was probably from his niece, who was pictured with his sister Carrie. Thelma passed away recently, October 18th, 2018, at the age of 95. And her home was the home that I visited that had the amazing fish, underwater scene wallpaper. And that home was actually built by Alan. So he continued his father's legacy of being a carpenter. To the memory of Alan, thank you for your service, and I'm so glad that I was able to save the photographs. I hope that you all enjoyed this presentation, and I hope that the next time you have a glass of wine or a nice beverage, you raise a toast to Alan and his service during the war.